Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Goddess channel. I am Fola. This is our special guest, Bry Guy.
Hello.
Hello, and we're here to talk about his transits. He has a lot of Scorpio energy in his chart, and the South Node has been in Scorpio since January 18th of 2022, and the North Node thus in Taurus. And so you've been experiencing a lot of shifting, consciously or unconsciously. The nodes have been bringing you closer to where you need to be in life, and you have a Taurus rising. So Brian is a Taurus rising. He is a Scorpio sun and a Leo moon. Always showing up consistently, having a job, having a way to make money. That's Taurus. It's just ingrained in us to find a source of income, to always have a source of income so that we're comfortable. Let's go over aspects. Harmonious aspects are, they just produce easier, low-hanging fruit, we'll say. It's like the fruit's there, but it's easier to get to. The harsher aspects are going to be challenges, but through time, they produce like really great fruit. They're the ones that you can't reach right away, but if you keep climbing, you get there.
Okay.
So, harmonious aspects are trines. Sextiles can be, they're harmonious, but they can also lead to they're enablers. They can be enablers of bad behavior. So your trine is going to really bring in different energies for good. The sextile will help you with the energy you already have. So it can either be, towards the better, or in your energy, you're just doing more of what you're doing. Conjunctions are tricky. It depends on the planets that are involved, whether or not the conjunction is going to be a harmonious aspect or a difficult one. Like Pluto conjunct Saturn is rough. Pluto is the planet of death and transformation and power, which also rules Scorpio. And Saturn is the planet of maturity. And so both of them coming together, it will force you to move into the next phase of your life, whether you're ready or not. Otherwise, there will be severe consequences through Saturn. I brought that up just to kind of give you an idea of a not great conjunction, but a lot of conjunctions are great, like Jupiter conjunct Venus. Most of them are great. It's just when you have two malefic planets conjuncting each other, it can be bad news.
Okay.
Or good news if you're towing the line. So there's that. And then, so the less harmonious aspects, the harsher aspects are going to be squares, in conjunctions. So when something is inconjunct, it just means that the sign that, the two signs are incompatible.
Okay.
So Aries energy and Virgo energy are completely different energies. They have nothing to do with each other. So how do you know when it's inconjunct is the sister signs. One sign away from that is an inconjunction. So Aries is a sister sign with Libra, which is why Scorpio and Virgo are inconjunct with Aries. They're very, very different. All right. So squares, they can be really harsh, but it's not in a punishing way. It's more in a, we've got to figure this out way. And so I don't think that a South Node, North Node conjunction or square with your Saturn is a bad thing. I think that it's going to propel you onto creating and really stabilizing the career that you want. But you haven't experienced it yet. So I won't know, but I will check in with you again. It's going to be around July 13th of this year.
Okay.
So January 17th, 18th would have been the days that the nodes switched over. Early January 18th of 2022. Now, let me look at my notes because there's a lot going on for you. The day of that switch. So your Uranus in Taurus was trining your natal Uranus in Capricorn. Uranus is the planet of chaos and disruption. But it's divine chaos. It's divine disruption. It's like, let's set you on this path. Let's put this in front of your face. Let's do this thing. And it's also in your 9th house. Your Uranus is in your 9th house, which is, it's trying to push you onto a path of higher learning or spirituality, traveling. What else? Ooh, 9th house is also like writing a book. It's like publishing and stuff like that. Mostly to get you on the path of being solid in your foundation of what you know to be true, what you believe. And that was the 3rd and final time. So that would have been a completion of a cycle that you started back in 2020.
At that point, I had recently quit my job in that spring. And so in the middle of summer, I was probably trying to figure out what I was going to be doing within the next 2 months. Because I remember giving myself sort of a deadline when I quit my job. I was like, okay, it's middle May, and I'm like, I'm finished working. I'm going to have the summer off. So I'm like, what do I want to do? And at that point, I was distraught. I was like, I don't know what I wanted to. Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. But I was like, what I'm doing now is not it.
Yes.
So
wait, what were you doing?
That was a building automation technician job.
Oh, okay.
So once I was out of there, I was just like, I need a little bit of time to kind of figure out what I'm feeling, how I'm going to go about the next few months, if that. And so I probably took like a good portion of June and July to kind of just hang out, have some time off, because that was the first time I didn't have a job since I was 16. Yeah, because like I even
Come on, Taurus energy.
It just I just always had a job.
Steady and stable.
Exactly. So I was always doing something, and I was like, okay. Then, like I said, once July came around, I had some time to just kind of do whatever. I was like, I got to get back into the swing of things. Yeah. And so at that point, it was probably like debating and like, okay, do I go to a trade school? Because I was thinking of that for a little bit.
Right.
Eventually, I landed going back to Middlesex for theater. And I was kind of like, maybe I can kind of do both at the same time. I was thinking about going to a trade school to be an electrician. But yeah, it was kind of just a point of trying to find a way to move forward a little bit, or to find a way out of this sense of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have control over what's going on.
Yeah.
It's good that I left what I was doing, but I don't know where to go from there. So 2021 would have been when I had quit.
Around May?
May 2021, I quit my job. In the moment, I also, because when I was in New York, I was also, taking acting classes and doing improv, and I was like, I was like, that's where I was kind of torn in between, if it's like, do a little bit more of like the crafty stage stuff, or actually try and be a part of the shows, plays, whatever is going on, and be like an actor. And that's where I decided at some point, I was like, let me try the acting thing and give that a shot, and actually put time and effort into that.
What made you try that? I want to know what, like, is that what you always wanted to try, or...
Acting or the electrician thing?
Not the electrician thing. No.
Acting, it was like, I feel like it was a slow burn over time, because I didn't do anything when I was younger in terms of like performing. And it wasn't ever part of like, a play production where I was like, helping out or building anything. Mm-hmm. The first thing I ever did that was a performance was my senior year of high school. It was the end of senior year. If you ever had like a male beauty pageant, like for our town, it was called like Mr. Monroe. Yeah.
Okay, I've never had one, but I watched one on One Tree Hill. Mm-hmm. So there's that.
So it's probably similar where it's just like, it's a bunch of dudes getting up on stage. You have your formal outfit that you start with. And then there's, what was it? There was a,
yes.
Yeah. It was such a fun time. It was such a fun time.
So in One Tree Hill, they actually auctioned the guys off, which I was like, a
interesting.
little problematic.
I don't.
They auctioned them off for like charity though, so it was like a date. It was like okay. you pay for me, and we go into this date and whatever. But it was still a little problematic.
Yeah, definitely.
I was like, oh, okay. But that's my only experience with that. But I'm glad you got to experience that. Did you win?
There was no other placements besides if you won, but I was in the top 3 or 4, whatever it was, because they cut down the field. And then the end of it was like questions part.
Your talent? Sorry.
My talent was, I choreographed. This is actually the first thing I ever did in terms of I choreographed like a Richard Simmons type dance. It was so fun. Like I got my friends together, and I was like, all right, we're gonna do this. Like we did it to It's Raining Men, and it was so. I was so glad we did it. And like the big first thing we did was like the curtain opens and we're all standing there like ready, waiting for the song to go off. And then we had a sound cue. I was like, all right, at this moment we had tearaway pants. Yeah. And the crowd went nuts. Usually,
Literally One Tree Hill.
oh, did that happen?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I did not watch that show, so I don't know.
Oh,
if that
man.
happened, then what a coincidence.
They used Leave Your Hat On as the song instead. That makes me so happy for you, Brian.
Yeah, it was a great time.
Okay, so you didn't tell me what made you choose. You said it was a slow burn.
Oh, okay. So I guess to go about it, there's just little things that pop up. So like after that, I was like, that was really fun. And I don't know how to get into any of that sort of stuff. So right after high school, I went to Middlesex. There I saw that they had the radio station. And so I joined that. I was a DJ there for a year. I transferred to Rutgers, and that was the first time I ever took like an acting class. And there I took like one or two acting classes, a bunch of like theater electives, some dance classes there for the first time.
Okay.
And like that's where it kind of built up. And then eventually, once I got to New York, that's when I started again.
Did you live there?
No, I commuted there.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was helpful because the job I had, they eventually gave me like a company car, and they paid for my expenses. Yeah, so it was nice. It was pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. And then when I was there, once I got comfortable being there, I would stay after, do improv, check out theaters, take classes. Yeah.
So a lot of people, and especially Tauruses, I have a very similar experience of quitting my job dramatically. But it's not in our nature to move away from things that are comfortable, to move away from things that are secure, that are a sure thing. So why didn't you want to stay?
It was just kind of, I at like the 1 year mark, I was like already kind of figuring like I had a feeling where I was like, I can't see myself doing this for more than 5 years. And I don't think it was necessarily that job, even though I knew it was just something I could learn and do. I think it was just that when I got that job, my mom passed away like maybe 4 or 5 months into it, because I was on a 6-month like training period. Like they see if you can do the job and whatnot, and if they want to keep you at the end of 6 months. And so it was in the summer when she passed away, and I'm still trying to deal with that. And she's kind of like the person I would go to in terms of like, hey, what do you think if I do this? Or hey, what do you think if I like wanted to do that? Like because I had a conversation.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I had a conversation with her before I was leaving school, because I felt like I was just spending money being at school and not knowing what I wanted to do.
So this is the first round of school.
Yes.
Okay. When, like 2014?
Yeah, I probably stopped school in either early 2014 or late 2013.
Okay.
When I left Rutgers, I worked for a little bit at a warehouse for a full-time job till eventually I got the job as a building automation technician. So I was kind of just like...
You worked at a warehouse, Brian? I feel like...
Yeah.
I feel like you don't belong in a warehouse. Oh, I don't know if anybody belongs in a warehouse.
Yeah,
but
I feel like that too.
Like, that is so interesting.
It was just something I had to kind of like keep going. My mom was like, if you quit school, then you got to work. And I'm like, I know, but I got to just find something. Yeah, it was either the same week or almost the same day. And I remember being like a slightly jarring experience of like, okay, here's the end of my education that I've continued up until that point, and then going into the real world and just not knowing, and then thinking about what am I going to do now?
Take me through how you actually landed on, this is what I want to do. I'm going to enroll in school. I just want to know like what really pushed you for that.
In the beginning of the pandemic, I was getting sent out to places and getting like turned away in New York, where it was like, we're not letting you in this building. And then I was like, all right, well, why isn't anyone in the office like calling? And then like they'd be like, well, we call the office and nobody's there. It's like, it's just nobody knows how to handle the situation that we're in. And so it was like, okay. And so eventually I switched over to the New Jersey side, and I started working in more places that were in New Jersey. And then that's when I was like, all right, I got to make a move. And so, like I said, calculated everything up. I'm like, I'm not doing anything now. No one's doing anything now. If I just throw all the money I make at my student loans, basically, and just kind of, just sit at home otherwise, eat food, and that's it, I could be good. And so I've been, tinkering with acting and like seeing how it would go and if I like to do it. And I'm like, every time I do something like that, it's fun, it's nerve-wracking, but it's super enjoyable.
Right. It's the good nerves.
Exactly. And so I was like, I might as well give this a shot, because it's one thing that I think it's a profession that people kind of poo-poo on, where like everybody wants to be, at some point, exactly. At some point, everyone's like, oh, okay. Everyone has the inkling to like want to be an actor or do something in that sense. I'm like, yeah, like I think it's
we need them.
Fun enough to be able, exactly.
We need people to tell stories.
Yeah. And so I was like, why can't I? Why don't I give it a shot? Give it a true full shot to be able to go out and be like, do these things, see how it feels. Do I want to continue to do it after that? And so after like deliberating with myself over like a month or so, I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to end up going and do it. Because I think also at that point, I really wanted to make a decision for myself. Because I felt like a lot of times prior, like I kind of mentioned a little bit before, like I would always kind of reason with like the person who I would go and like be like, hey, what do you think about this for? Is not there anymore. And so I would have to just be like, I really didn't even want to kind of consult with anybody. I would be like, hey, I just did this thing. And then talk about it afterwards and be like, okay. Then you get the opinions of like, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that, whatever. That I wasn't so much concerned with that. I was just like, let me do the thing that I have in my brain right now and see where it ends up.
So this is going to bring us to some more Scorpio South Node talk, because Scorpio being in your 7th house means, so Scorpio energy first is very connected to other people. Like I have a Scorpio moon, and other people's emotions, literally, like I'll feel something and I'll be like gung ho about it, and then like an hour later I'm like, oh, that wasn't me, that was the other person I was talking to. You pick up on other energies from other people very easily. And that's why they say Scorpio is the psychic energy, because it is so aggressively intuitive that sometimes the lines get blurred between what's yours and what's others. And so that being in your 7th house is so significant, because it means that other people's opinions and what they think about what you're doing, if you haven't done it already, if you're just deciding, like, let's say you decide to put the black pants on and I say, I don't like those black pants. Even if you just said to yourself in the mirror, this looks fucking awesome, you would go and change your pants. And so a lot of this Scorpio South Node transiting your 7th house and a little bit of your 6th is going away from what others want from you, what they expect from you, what they need from you, and focusing on the Taurus side, which is I am comfortable within my own energy. I'm making decisions that are comfortable and good for me, and everybody else can have everything they want to say, but this is what I'm doing. Taurus is the bull energy. Like, you cannot move me unless I decide to move. I'm sitting here. I'm doing this. And so I'm excited for you. Like, I feel like this last year and a half, and you can tell me how you feel about it, especially so you've experienced the South Node going over your Mars and your Pluto and your Mercury, all in that 7th house. So Mercury being in your 7th house means that you're like, you love witty conversations, you're attracted to people with witty conversations, but it being in Scorpio means that the people that you talk to may not be as, not nice, but they can bite, yeah? And then the Pluto of it all gives you that power dynamic. And I said yesterday, and this goes for everybody, Pluto in your 7th house, it can go one way or the other. It doesn't mean that you are dominating other people in your relationships. It can also mean that people are dominating you. It's one or the other, but it's a cycle of relationships that are slightly uneven, unbalanced. And then having Mars is like you being surrounded by people who are fiery and have combative-ish, combative-ish energy. And I just feel like, especially having your rising in Taurus, it's all about letting all of that go. With your South Node in Cancer in the 3rd house, you are prone to listen to others. You're prone to care about what others think and to nurture others and to see through, even if somebody's bullshitting, you can see the good in it. You can understand why they're having a temper tantrum because of the Cancer South Node. Like, the range of emotional intelligence that you have is susceptible to your 7th house of letting other people take you away, letting them drive your ship. You know, like today, why I made a point to ask you what you want. What do you want to do? What do you want to eat? What do you like? Is because I think that you're prone to be like, oh no, it's fine. What do you want?
Yeah,
and
pretty
I'll
much.
Just be cool with it. And that's wonderful and malleable, but it could just lead to people making concessions a lot. Concession after concession after concession. And then you look around and you don't have anything that you want. It's all things that other people wanted for you or pushed onto you. And I think that's really what the huge transformation of this last year is about.
I would say a lot of that is accurate because for myself, I do enjoy listening to people much more so than talking because I like to see what they say, how they have to say it, and then just kind of pick up from them the things they enjoy, they don't enjoy. What do we have in common? We might not have anything in common. They just might be talking to me about something that I have no idea about, you know? And it's just, I will sit there and oh my gosh. Any song that pops up, I'm just like, I'm just going to sit here until they're all finished singing the part of the song they enjoy. But exactly. And so, but it doesn't mean like I don't enjoy being there, but I'm just there. And it's nice.
If you're in a group and you're observing and letting everybody else talk and seeing and analyzing everybody, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to go along with it. I don't get to know you the way that you're getting to know me if all you're doing is listening to me talk.
That is also
and not
true.
Asserting yourself.
Yes.
In that way. And I just think that this North Node, especially, we're going to talk about when it hit your ascendant. It's like standing firm in your energy. Which, hey, if your energy is like, I'm cool, I'm just here doing my thing, then that is also standing firm in your energy. But with Scorpio in your 7th house, just knowing that you have a tendency to let other people sweep you away.
I feel like especially if I go to a place that I don't know a lot of people, I am much more comfortable being like, I'm going to sit here and listen rather than maybe explain myself or like, I guess, show myself in a true and authentic way. Because sometimes I might not know how to do that, or I don't feel like I express it well in maybe verbally versus, you know, showing up and being like, hey, I have games to play, or like, hey, I have this thing to do. Like, to me, that feels more authentic because I feel like I almost use that as my social crutch of like, hey, let's get everybody involved. And like, to me, playing a game is a way to experience how somebody handles a certain situation, because depending on the type of game it may be, how somebody if it brings out the competitive spirit in somebody who's like quiet, which I see a lot of. Like, you see somebody who kind of just like hangs out by themselves and you're like, hey, you want to play this game? They're like, I love this game. Yeah, exactly. You just see it on their face and they're like, I'm ready to play, I'm ready to win, and this is what we're going to do. And it just brings out like a whole different side of a person.
So do you use it as a device to get to know people?
I would say so.
Okay.
And I feel like to me that to me makes it easier than going up to somebody and be like, hey, what do you like? Or like, because I feel like a lot of people sometimes are either off put by that or feel like they get asked that all the time. And like, you know, there's sort of normal generalized questions of getting to know somebody that now I feel like are kind of plastered everywhere, especially like if you're on like a dating app or like anything else where you're putting yourself out there and it's like, what do you like? What do you don't like? And then somebody's like, hey, what's up? How do you feel about this or that? And then I feel like we hear it like a million times.
Dating apps.
Exactly. Like you hear the same thing all the time and you're kind of like, what is this? Like, I'm seeing the same thing everywhere and I don't like it.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So you're still talking about how to get to know other people.
Yeah.
You're not talking about how to let people know who you are and how they can get to know you.
I'd probably say I don't know how to do that. It's just like, for me, the simplest thing is I'm the opposite of what I just described, where it's like, if somebody comes up and asks me like what I like, I'll tell them. Like, that seems to me the easiest way to do that. Just like if somebody's like has a general question about me, whatever it may be, I'll give them an honest answer.
Okay.
And I feel like that's the only way I know how to kind of go about it. It's just
letting people ask you.
Yeah, like a lot of the times I feel like if people will ask me something, it's much easier than like I don't know how I'm going to start a conversation to give somebody information about me that might seem relevant or that they're interested in. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
You're still talking about the other people. Yeah. You're still considering all of their feelings and not thinking about just you being
right. But if I'm explaining myself, if I'm in a social space, whatever it may be, like a party or I guess wherever it may be, I don't know. I can't analyze myself enough to know of like, what do I do in that situation? Like, I feel like I would just be like, I say hello to the people that I know. Maybe if something's going on, ask like if people are playing a game or what are we doing here? Yeah, but I don't think of myself in terms of like, am I being true to myself? Because a lot of
I don't want you to think about like that.
Sure. What do you think?
Not necessarily just you're being true to yourself. I don't want you to think about that because you are. However you show up is true to yourself and authentic, unless you're saying yes when you mean no. Like unless like you are saying yes because you want people to feel good or you don't want to hurt people or you don't want to like, that's inauthentic. So anything outside of that is you being your authentic self. I'm talking about your assertion of your authentic self. Like, because that's another thing that we're going to get into is the Mars. Your Mars is on your descendant. And so it indicates in your chart that you're not comfortable with asserting yourself, that you let other people lead. And part of that North Node being on, because it was on your, let's go to the date. It was on your ascendant the same day that it's on your descendant, and your Mars is like 0.2 degrees away from your descendant. So they're literally on top of each other. It's pushing for the assertion. It's pushing for who are you? How do you show up? And for you to clarify the lens that you see the world through, how the world sees you. And it being on that descendant of Mars is like letting go of others doing it for you.
Okay, that makes more sense because I would agree, because I feel like a lot of the time I would usually, I guess in a way, let other people speak for me, where especially if I'm being introduced and I don't necessarily have the strongest opinion on myself about certain things. Like if someone was be like, hey, this is Brian, he likes X, Y, Z, whatever it may be. And if it's something that's like close, I'll be like, yeah, sure, it's fine. That's okay. I don't mind. I'm not gonna.
It's fine. Just misrepresent me.
I'm not gonna. Exactly. Like I'm not gonna be particular, especially because like if it's people that I know I'm never gonna see again, or like if it's people that
I mean, fair.
Exactly. Yeah. If it's something that is just like a small social situation that's gonna pass by, never gonna see a certain amount of people, then you just let it go, or I just let it go, I should say. And so I will say I think I might have a little bit more of a tolerance with making concessions, or just maybe that the concessions I've made at times aren't so important to me. I do remember specifically, like, growing up, it was good and bad because I didn't feel like I had a lot of control over things and I felt like I was getting pushed in a certain direction. Yeah. But I think it was also, in certain terms, it was like a good thing because when I was growing up, I was very timid. I was shy. My parents put me in sports, which I think helped. It was also, I think, a hard thing was when I was growing up, I was in like a lot of speech classes and basic skills classes because I had trouble with like reading and reading comprehension.
Okay.
And
you're a listener.
Yeah, I later found out I was dyslexic, and that runs in my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
And so that was a good thing where it's getting pushed on, because that was my mom going like, hey, like you're going to go to these, basic skills classes to help you do that after school, be in certain classes in school that are going to help you learn and read and comprehend, which is great, because I'd probably say even up until like my sophomore year of high school, it was like there was a lot of being scared to speak publicly or read publicly. Like if you're in a class and you're like, hey, we're reading this passage today out loud with everybody, I'd be terrified. I'd be terrified. I'd be like, it's my turn to read, and I'd be like, ugh. Because also, even part of it was just that I wouldn't comprehend it as fast as other students. And they'd be like, we'd read a passage, and then they'd be like, cool, what did we just read about? And I'd be like, I don't know. I just read the words. I just read the words on the page. I don't know what they mean. And then, everybody else will have their opinions on what it may have meant.
That's a tourist thing too. Listen, I always had issues with, I also have my Mercury in Taurus, which also presents in a different way, but I've always had issues with going at like a fast pace. I have no problem reading. I have no problem writing. But when you put me like XPOS was a fucking bitch. When you do that, like I worked so hard. The first time I ever took XPOS, I worked so fucking hard to put everything together, to fix my shit, to hand in those papers on time, and then I failed because I failed the time test, the time writing thing at the end. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the same thing happened with my SATs. I did fine, but like didn't finish the essay. Thank God I love math, but like it's a tourist thing to be slower to take information, to digest information. And it's not a bad thing. Like a lot of people jump the gun on shit,
Right.
And a Taurus is going to sit with something until they know how they feel.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to say anything if I don't have an opinion, or if I haven't sat with something long enough. I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that?
Exactly. I feel like that a lot. I got off on a little tangent, but
well, you're talking about how when you were younger, your parents put you into things and you were quieter and they kind of led you.
Yes.
And kind of made decisions for you.
Yeah.
Which is another Cancer South Node type of thing.
And I think that's a little bit natural just because I think that's parenting, You're like, depending. Like your kid may vocally be like, hey, I don't like doing what I'm doing. And their parents will be like, you're going to do it. And like you hear a lot of that type of shit too. But for me, the most part, I think I enjoyed a lot of what I was put into, which was helpful. Like I love sports. I love being active, and it was always fun to learn a new sport or try a new sport, which my dad was always putting us into. How many sports did you do? Growing up, the main three that I played were football, basketball, and baseball. Okay. But here and there, like we always tried like little things. Like my brother wrestled more than I did, but I think I wrestled for like a year, a little bit, maybe a little less. We did soccer when we were like really young.
Wrestle you, Brian?
Well, when I was young, I also didn't enjoy that.
How long have you been this tall?
Maybe freshman, sophomore year.
Who is wrestling you?
There's also many people bigger than me that were wrestling too.
All right.
Yeah.
If you say so. Sure.
But yeah, so like I think also one thing I figured out from it was like I didn't enjoy a lot of like individual sports as much, like wrestling. I enjoyed team sports, like working together with people and like trying to figure it out.
You would get energy from, like the Scorpio sun would get energy from being around an entire group. Like going, this is what we're doing. Let's go all in. It's your Venus and your Jupiter that are in your fifth house. So yeah, you love anything that brings you into a childlike energy, anything that gives you fun and laughter and anything that's creative. And so like, and the Virgo in your fifth house will make you diligent about it, which is interesting, but it does. It makes you diligent about it. So a sport that you can learn how to win, and especially with others, that like, cause they're giving you energy, it's like the perfect little for you.
Oh yeah. Like
but also theater.
Yeah. Theater. Even something that's not sport related, like I always have like in the back, I have games always in the back of my car. And like I bring them and I'll be like, hey, do people have any interest in playing like one of these different types of games? And then growing up.
That to me is amazing.
Yeah. And then for a lot of my childhood, there's a game, like a trading card game called Magic the Gathering. I may have mentioned it once before.
You have.
But so with that, growing up, there used to be a thing called Friday Night Magic, which you would go to like a local hobby shop, and then you would play whatever you're going to play. Like they would have little tournaments. Like a lot of it would be like, you build a deck of cards from these cards that you get on the spot, and you play and you see who wins at the end of the night.
You're a wizard, Brian.
Made by Wizards of the Coast, so it would make sense. It would make sense.
Okay, so this is going to bring us to talking about your 7th house, talking about your house of relationships, and this is one-on-one relationships, like close friendships. It also includes like parents and siblings and stuff like that, but siblings is really ruled in the 3rd house, but it's more of like one-on-one relationships. So any relationship that you have one-on-one with another person. Mm-hmm. With Scorpio being in that 7th house, you may attract people who are a little emotionally manipulative if they're in their shadow energy. You may attract people who are extremely giving and sensitive if they're in their higher vibration of that energy. But with Mars being there, it means you're attracting people who physically look great. You are attracting people who may be combative. Mm-hmm. With Pluto being there, it means that your one-on-one relationships tend to have a power imbalance. And that can go one way or the other. I just kind of want to know what your one-on-one relationships have been like throughout your life and how the evolution of that has come about. And then I'm going to give you this date one more time. January 21st is a big day. Mm-hmm. It's the day that the South Node conjuncts Mars, which is going away from conflicts, but also fighting for the things that you want, instead of fighting for the things that other people want. The South Node conjunct your descendant is people who don't need to be in your life falling away. And it can be in a combative way, but it can also just be they just kind of slowly disappear. But what the South Node does is it puts obstacles in your path so that you can choose the North Node, so that you can recognize something that is just not for you, so that you can step more into your power. People who aren't helping you progress fall away. There we go. Shows you who is here to help you become more stable and comfortable. It's so that would have been a rearranging of the relationships in your life and the ones that you put priority into and the ones that you're okay, well, maybe this can go away. Maybe this can go away. How have your one-on-one relationships gone throughout your life? Close friendships, actual romantic relationships, mentors, anything that's just you and me.
Okay. So if I guess I'll start with some close friendships. When I was younger, I'll even say probably around the age of high school into college, was probably a big evolution for me in terms of seeing how I deal with people leaving and going to different places that I'm not going to see them as much anymore. So I remember there was a lot of shift in myself that I didn't know how to handle my friends leaving for school, knowing that I was going to be in the same place that I've always been, because it felt like there's a comfortable part that I thought would always be there that's not going to be there. I kind of refer to it as the bubble. That was one of the bubbles that popped for me, this social bubble, where I was this is always going to be here, but it's not. Everybody has their own direction, and I always had the thought of everybody's still going to be here. Everyone's going to do the same things. And then it's oh, exactly.
That's South Node in the 3rd house.
It's when I tell you, I did not. I had a very good friend, one of my best friends growing up. And it was my fault for the way I acted of how this friendship eventually started to fizzle out. But it was one of those major times where I was okay, I need to reassess how I see relationships working, especially friendships. Okay. Where I can't hold on to them where I think that they're always going to be the same. Because because I think growing up, you don't realize that, people, when they move away or, if they pass.
That it's okay.
Exactly. Like, it's okay for people to go in these different directions because they have a different want in life, or maybe they need to a change of scenery for some reason, whatever it may be. But that was something for me that I started to grow a little bit more in the realistic part of my life, where it's like, okay, things come and they go.
Do you mind getting a little bit more in detail about what happened with your friend?
So the specifics of it, basically the incident that happened was, at that time, me and my best friend Alex, he had a girlfriend.
Shout out to Alex.
Shout out to Alex. He had a girlfriend that was going to Penn State at that time, and my best friend was also going to Penn State.
Okay.
And so she was there, and she was so excited to have me up. And at that point, I was kind of nervous about going out there because Alex has been out there a bunch of times. I've never been out to Penn State.
Me neither, but I had a lot of friends who did.
Yeah. And so, looking back on it, the whole weekend overall was great. It was a great time. Mm-hmm. She's not really super into football, but she got us tickets to go to a Penn State game for I think it was a whiteout game, which was really fun. and so she just basically set up a whole great weekend of events that were going on. And for some reason, and I think when I reflect back on it, I see that she has a whole different social circle of friends that are there versus the people who we used to hang out with back home, and then being in this different environment that I'm not comfortable with, and then seeing how this life is kind of moving on. And I was just like, okay, I kind of don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if she picked up on that as this was happening or not. And we kind of had a realistic conversation. And I think at that point, I remember saying to her something. I was like, I think maybe we're growing apart as friends, or I just can't deal with the social change. And we were still we would still hang out when she'd come home and stuff, but then at that point she was also very into traveling and whatnot, and was very interested in Europe. Mm-hmm. And so I remember either that summer or the summer after, she spent time in England, but the whole time was fantastic. And at that point, as a late teenager, early adult, I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Why do I feel I don't, and at that point, I don't think I was mature enough to process my feelings at that point. A little bit, because we were talking about it together, and we would talk about our feelings a lot with each other.
Okay.
And we were very close. And so that was one time, after that weekend, I went home and I was like, all right, this is one of those, you drop a mirror, you put it back together, but it's not the same again afterward type of situation. For me, it was just a person that I didn't expect to lose in that way, but it happened, and I have to deal with it because of my own immaturity.
So the resistance to change would probably come through in the fixed energy that you have in your rising sign, your sun sign, and your moon sign. I mean, honestly, you have a lot of fixed energy. The only malleable energy that you have is in your Jupiter and your Venus, which is in Virgo. And that is where you find growth and expansion through. But the fixed energy, it's not a bad thing. I have a lot of fixed energy too. It just makes it more resistant to change. And things will not change until you are ready for them. But I think maybe that was a catalyst for you to know what to expect with the rest of your friends and how things may alter. So the day that the nodes switched into Taurus and Scorpio, the day before that would have been your third and final transit of Uranus trine Uranus, which it is bringing different things into your life, which also might have been the puppies.
Could have been.
But also, it's how you show up, because it's Taurus is in your first house, and that's where Uranus is, and it's still there right now. And Capricorn rules your Uranus in your ninth house. And that is about building a foundation of knowledge and wisdom. So maybe it wasn't the puppies, but it's a significant day for you. It's also the Cancer full moon. So when there's a full moon, that means the sun is in the opposite sign and the moon is in the sign of that full moon. So Cancer and Capricorn are opposites. Capricorn also, ruling your Uranus, which makes the energy stronger, but it's in your 10th house, which would have been, it's just career driven. This is how you're seen. This is what you're known for. So the sun is in this house, shining a light on the moon in your 4th house. There are multiple transits happening at the same time, but they all, for me, point to an argument or just a disagreement, in the sense that your feelings could get swept away, but the sun is trying to show you that what's more important is what you want to do, not necessarily getting so swept away with the feelings of whatever was going on. This is January 22.
January 22. Yes. So we had some brand new puppies at that point. And I guess, because also I didn't know, because I just started school that previous year. So we were going into the spring semester. And so, so actually at that point, I was having a lot of doubts about school because of the fact that this is the first time they were back in person since COVID. And so with that, especially going for a theater major and kind of going to that department, it was a little shaky because they didn't know if they were putting on shows. They didn't know what was going to be allowed. And then also just funding for the shows, if they were going to do anything like that. And so it wasn't necessarily the experience I was expecting to have. And it was kind of rough to be able to go to these classes and, try and figure out how they're going to work with COVID restrictions and everything else like that. So I started to have little doubts because I remember at the end of that spring semester, I didn't know if I was going to go back to school that following year, just because there were things going on that I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get what I want out of this. And I was paying for school throughout this time.
Well, yeah, that's how it's like.
It's just, so it's not like I'm, I have a student loan that I'm going to put off for X amount of time afterwards.
Right.
And so I think the one thing that kind of made me stick with it was just that I didn't want to quit on it so easily, where I could have easily been like, you know what, this isn't working out the way I wanted it to. And I'm glad that I didn't, because it kind of grew a little bit. Yeah, exactly. It grew little by little from that point on, where it didn't look to be as fruitful, but eventually it started to produce that fruit that you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cancer and Capricorn are very interesting sister signs to me, because Capricorn is that I will achieve. I will do the thing. I will stick, even if it kills me. There's this I want to say it's a running joke, but if you're not in the community, then you don't really know. But what a vacation with earth signs would be. And so if it was just a Capricorn on their own, they would get up the mountain, but they'd probably die trying. Because it's blind determination. It's like, I want to achieve. The Virgo would never go up the mountain because they would be so busy planning and trying to figure out what could possibly go wrong, that they would be like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And they would just never be ready. And the Taurus, the Taurus is sleeping at the bottom of the mountain. But when all three of them go together, the Capricorn has the will to be like, let's go, we're fucking going. The Virgo plans for anything that could possibly go wrong. And the Taurus makes sure that there's gas in the tank. So we're fed, we have food. We're not dying like the Capricorn wants to do. We're not doing that. We have water. We have our map. We're okay, great. Are we set? Cool. Are we comfortable? Do we have sleeping bags? Do we have all those things? So it's like you need all three earth signs to get up the mountain. So when I think about Capricorn and Cancer, because Capricorn is so quick to shut it down. I'm not going to do this emotional thing. I have feelings, but they don't matter. What matters is my goal. And then Cancer is all about the feelings. It is all about emotional, raw feelings. So the way that signs work in their element? Yes, in their element is there's a progression. Taurus is the bedrock. It's like the first one. It's comfortable, safety. Can you take care of yourself? Virgo is the helper and like the person who makes sure that all the details are fine and straight. And I want to think of Virgos like they're like little honeybees, like going around making sure that everybody's got their things. They're the helper. Capricorn, after that, the progression is I have my safety. I've got I'm prepared, and now I'm going to achieve. So the same thing happens with water signs. It's a progression. Cancer is just your natural unfiltered emotion. It is the entire emotional spectrum, and it's being okay with that. Do you know any Cancers in your life?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, well, yeah. I know a couple of Cancers, and they're real, real sweet. But if you piss them off, it is like it's Scorpio level, but like in a different way, where you're like, oh, we're all going to jail tonight? Gotcha. Like the whole, like they're just like, I'm going to feel all the things that I'm feeling right now and it's fucking okay. You know? And then Scorpio is, the progression of that is like going underneath and figuring out why. Why do I feel this way? What's going on? What's triggering me? What's going on under the surface? What do I not seeing right away? What do I have to figure out? And then Pisces is the transcendence of knowing that it's okay, that everyone is the same. We all have the same emotional fields, and that is beautiful. It's like raw emotion. Why do we have this emotion? Acceptance. You know, with the Cancer full moon, those would have been like, I feel this way. I don't know if I want to continue with this. Like all of my feelings are important and they matter. But then the sun goes, but what do you want? Do you want to stay in this moment or do you want to push forward?